They say that the hardest part about writing a game story is just getting started. Now, I have to say I agree, because as I sat down to write the script for this video, I was met with this screen that I'm sure everybody out there is all too familiar with. Well, welcome to the world of working on a Windows platform. It works great when you're not downloading 15 simultaneous updates, assuming you're not using this garbage. Oh well, I guess I'll just see you guys next week. Just kidding. As an idiot with government grants meant to help pay for school, I knew it was my duty to spend it wisely. So, I needlessly bought a second computer that, for all intents and purposes, is exactly the same as the one I already had. And neither of them were cheap. Anyways, I can just switch over to my other computer and... Oh, for f***'s sakes. Welcome back to the channel. Glad to have you join us for the next episode in our game development journey. If you missed the first episode covering the history of my idea for the game, as well as a quick game overview, I'll be making a playlist for the entire series that I will update on a weekly basis, link in the description. So, this week we'll be talking about the game's story, as well as developing an actual title for the game. And I know, the working title we came up with in the last episode was really good, but I was worried a title like that could get the hype train moving just a little bit faster than what I'm comfortable with. So rumor has it that you don't actually need to write a coherent beginning, middle, and end for your games anymore, and you can just patch them in with future updates later on.
Who gave this to you, huh? Live service, hard drugs? Are you serious? Tell me who gave this. Did EA give this to you?
But we're going to be kicking it old school with this one and adding in a story free of charge. All that and more coming up right now. So, last week I talked about how I wanted the game to have a sort of past meets future focus. How will I pull off such an endeavor, you might ask?
Time travel!
Actually, it's a little more complicated than that, but that's what we're here to talk about. So, without further ado, let's get started. Now, I've always preferred RPGs that give the main character as little backstory as possible, and let the player decide what kind of person the main character is. So, like the Bethesda games that I'm looking to for inspiration, not this one. The only bit of character backstory comes from the game's intro. And to give you the full effect of the story I have in mind, I'm going to do something I've never done in the history of this channel. I'm going to be serious. So, the player starts off as a prisoner.
Hey, you're finally awake.
Okay, now I'm going to be serious.
Gonna tell Aunt Mary about Uncle John. He claimed he had the music, but he had a lot of fun. Yeah, baby.
The game begins in the present day with the player, as part of a team of military operatives known as Knightwatch, being skydropped into a heavily guarded facility where they are to investigate what enemy forces have been researching at the base. So while the player is taught about the basic mechanics of the game, like the controls, melee combat, shooting, taking cover, and the quest journal, the intro mission continues with the team splitting up and searching different areas of the facility. The quest journal, like most RPGs, will serve the function of keeping the player updated on what is going on in the story around them. The mission comes to a head when the player comes across a device that looks like what the team has been sent to investigate. As they begin running scans, they trigger an alarm and activate defensive countermeasures. The base defenses, while attacking the player, inadvertently damage the device, causing it to malfunction. A pulse envelops the base from the inside out, and the screen goes black. The player awakens in a daze to find themselves surrounded with rubble and debris. Seeing a light poking through the cracks of their surroundings, the player attempts to crawl to freedom, only to loosen more rubble and further bury themselves. The player loses consciousness, and the screen fades to black. The player then awakes in a house under the care of, who we find out later to be a treasure hunter, who found them buried in the rubble. Think the intro of Fallout New Vegas when you wake in Doc Mitchell's house. The miner explains that there was a cave-in at the nearby temple just outside of town in the mountains where he found you. Your journal updates to say that you notice the place you've woken up seems to be stuck in time. Not in the literal sense, just that everything looks old, right down to the lighting, as the man who apparently rescues you is using oil lamps and torch sconces, and doesn't appear to have any electricity or any sort of modern technology for that matter. Believing you to just be a common drunkard with no memory of the night before, he advises you to ask around town for information about the events that led up to your rescue. Leaving the house, you're surprised to find that, just like the man's house, the whole village seems to be completely void of any sort of modern technology or amenities. There's a mill, a general store, a tavern, and even a blacksmith. Think Riverwood from Skyrim. After asking around, you find that nobody in the village has ever seen you before, and they all comment on your weird clothes, claiming that you bear the marks of what they call the old gods. They take particular interest in the military patch on your shoulder, saying that's the symbol of their god of warfare. They say that they've seen similar symbols in the temple where the treasure hunter discovered you, and ask if you serve the old gods. Wanting to know more, in hopes of figuring out what's going on, you ask for directions back to the temple, which you assume must be near the base you were tasked with infiltrating. The treasure hunter who found you advises you to visit some landmarks around town to collect some armor, weapons, and supplies before you head back up the mountain, as he advises you there are bandits and creatures that may be less than welcoming. There are also rumors around town that a great dragon lives in the mountains, whose blood-curdling roars can be heard through the night as it feasts on animals and unlucky adventurers. Obviously, this must be complete nonsense and the rantings of people who are clearly delusional, so you pay no mind to the rumors. The decision to visit the nearby shops to acquire gear and supplies is optional, and meant to show the player the basics of weapon and armor crafting, bartering, and many other useful skills. After gearing up with some weapons and armor that the journal notes as being archaic in nature, and some questionable concoctions that the townspeople refer to as potions, you head back up the mountain. A short ways up the mountain path, and you meet your first enemies in this new world. A small group of thieves and bandits who want to steal your gear that was marked with the symbols of the old gods that the villagers pointed out earlier. With your newly acquired gear, you quickly dispatch them and continue up the mountain. Arriving at the door of the temple, you come face to face with a creature the likes of which you've never seen before. Your journal updates describing it as what appears to be a mutated wolverine of sorts. It's glowing green and begins attacking you and using abilities you would consider unnatural for an animal. After dispatching the mutant creature, you enter what the townfolk refer to as the Temple of the Old Gods. You make your way through the temple, dealing with bandits and ne'er-do-wells, and along the way, you learn about the loot system, item rarities, and different combat and stealth techniques that can help you in your travels. As you reach the inner sanctum of the temple, you discover that the dungeon is in fact not a temple for serving the ancient gods, at least that wasn't its original purpose. Rather, this is in fact the base you were sent to investigate. A ways into the facility, you discover the remains of the machine that malfunctioned, and you do what you can to reactivate it. The machine begins to hum with power and starts back up. The screen affixed to its side, thick with dust and debris, flickers on. Perusing the files reveals that the machine was in development as a device to manipulate the flow of time. Your journal updates to state that you believe you may have been sent back centuries in time, but that doesn't explain the mutated creatures with otherworldly powers that you encountered earlier. As you continue your search, you discover a generator switch that may restore power to the entire facility beyond just the mysterious machine. Believing that this can help you in your search for answers, you turn over the switch, and with a loud hum, the lights of the facility activate, rumbling back to life and illuminating your surroundings. The voice of the facility's AI greets you.
Hello. It has been 1,043 years since emergency termination of my protocols. My logs show that you are not a member of facility staff. Have you been sent to sabotage the work of my creators, perhaps? No matter. Regardless of your intentions, what you do here will make little difference. This facility has been out of operation for some time, and I suspect my creators have long since perished. Archive security scans register your last visit prior to my termination. How is it that you have not perished like the creators? Stand still.
As a beam of scorchingly bright light shines down from above, the machine begins to scan you.
Intriguing. Your genetic signatures suggest a biologic age of much less than the time since your last visit. It appears that the device built by my creators worked as intended. Regrettably, you are not the intended subject.
To your surprise, The AI reveals that you have not gone back in time, but rather, you've been sent forward over 1,000 years. You ask it what has happened to the world, describing the creatures you came across, as well as the strange town in which you awoke that appeared to have been sent back to the Middle Ages.
In the year 2046, civil unrest and increasing international tensions led to my creators launching a nuclear offensive against foreign enemies. Our return fire on their part triggered a war that decimated the populations of your time. Since then, I suspect that radiation amongst remnants of other technologies have ravaged this world in ways I would very much like to see. This may explain the creatures that attacked you upon your entrance to the facility.
Before the AI can continue, you are attacked by another glowing enemy. This time, it resembles a man. It would appear as though the reactivation of facility power alerted the man to your presence. He appears to be in a crazed state and claims to be the most powerful mage to have ever lived, thanks to the powers granted to him by the old gods. He is, for all intensive purposes, a wizard that uses powers against you that you thought to be impossible. Before you can attempt to speak with him, he lets loose a blast of what can only be described as magical energy that nearly misses you, blasting through a nearby wall and showcasing the sheer power that the man controls. This fight will serve as an introduction to just a few of the many abilities your experience in the introductory mission have granted you.
It would appear this specimen has not been left untouched by the effects of the creators. I would suggest avoiding his attempts to incapacitate you. Perhaps it may assist. One moment.
Another scan from the machine, similar to the one before, envelops you. Except this time, you can hear the voice coming from inside your head.
I have created a neural link between myself and your subconscious. I will now be able to communicate with you beyond the confines of this facility. Please wait while I analyze appropriate combat strategies. I advise you to take cover in the meantime.
The character's heads-up display updates as you hear the AI speak again.
You should now see what I see. I have marked a weapons cache nearby. The weapons stored here may have grown less effective with time, but could be of some assistance. I've taken the liberty of activating some dormant abilities granted to you by your interactions with the tools of my creators. These may assist you in your efforts to survive.
Your heads-up display updates to show that you have unlocked the first two of many time dilation abilities. The first of which is the Max Payne style bullet time discussed in the first episode that allows you to slow down time and dive through the air to both dodge enemy attacks and return fire in a much more controlled and cinematic way. The second of which is your phase ability. Phase abilities power up your weapons by harnessing the free energy in the matter surrounding them. This phase ability will power up your sword and allow you to momentarily take down the barriers of the mage so that you can damage him with any weapon you have in your arsenal, using anything from your fists to the guns you just found. Through some careful maneuvering and combat strategies, you're able to deal with the self-proclaimed mage of the old gods.
It would appear that the specimen has been terminated. I would suggest searching his body for any useful information. Before we continue, I suppose we should establish titles with one another. My unit code is VGL21857, but for ease of reference, you may call me Virgil.
Perusing his belongings, you find a journal. His journal describes a creature that he has been serving in the name of the so-called Old Gods. He has coined it Elvreg, Keeper of Ancient Secrets. The journal claims that this creature guards artifacts left behind by the ancient gods, and he has been tasked with providing sacrifices to it. This could explain the screams described by the villagers in the nearby town.
The room where the creature is supposedly held contains no ancient secrets. My layout of the facility shows that the creature is located in the armory. The armory is adjacent to the Department of Biological Experimentation. There is no certainty as to what effect 1,000 years of genetic mutation may have had on the creatures being studied by my creators.
You make your way through the decrepit halls of the facility to find a glass enclosure with dead plants and foliage inside, but no sign of any animals. The glass on the enclosure is broken, suggesting whatever creatures the enclosure once held are now roaming free. Virgil directs you to the armory, where you see the large metal door has been torn completely from its hinges by something with immense power.
My schematics of the facility show that the armory should be relatively small, roughly 25 by 30 feet. This was a science facility focused on research and development, not warfare. My scans show this chamber has grown considerably since the development of these plans.
Virgil scans the armory as you enter to reveal a massive chamber that appears to have been carved out by a creature of immense size and power. Before you can react, the room starts to rumble. Dust falls from the ceiling above, and you hear a deep, menacing growl emanate from the dark chasm ahead of you. The flashing red light from the auxiliary power system illuminates the chamber for only a second at a time, before it's pitch black again. Each blink of the light menacingly paints the walls in a deep blood red as the rumbling grows louder and the air grows heavier, and then complete stillness. So, without spoiling anything, as the story goes on, your job in this new archaic future, where modern weaponry such as guns and tactical armor are believed to be artifacts of so-called old gods, you are tasked with helping the new world protect itself against the threats set in motion by your ancestors. You begin to show the simple people of this time how to protect themselves against the creatures they fear so much, and you begin forming a team to guard those who cannot protect themselves. As you journey through the lands, meeting and recruiting new members to your cause, a la Mass Effect 2, you will grow in strength and reclaim the land from those that seek to destroy it. And what will this initiative be called, you might ask? Well, you've already heard the name. The protectors of this new world, those who would wield the power of the old gods to push back the forces of evil, shall be known as... So, there you have it. Be sure to tune in next week when we officially begin the creation of this ambitious project using the power of Unreal Engine 4. I hope you're excited because I am.